Welcome to our next episode of Decent Med Showcase Miracle Inspirations. Today we're here with Sandra Lee, and she has a very unique take on medicine. Not only does she specialize in sound healing, but she also is certified in combat brain training, a brain exercise developed by neuroplastician John Kennedy, developed with support from the US military to help the brain focus, release stored stress, and rewire around damage. Sandra, introduce yourself.
So wonderful to be here with you, Samuel. So, I have a background in chemistry. I went to the California Institute of Technology and I have a degree in chemistry. And this is what I bring to being a healing practitioner, the ability to bridge the worlds between logical left brain science and like the woo woo energetics and helping people relate to both. I love helping people to be able to understand what's going on in their bodies so they're empowered to be able to help themselves.
100%. And I like how you said that you operate on the intersection between the woo woo and the traditional science. So, with your background in chemistry, why is it that you chose to get into sound healing?
So I went to college and I was studying chemistry, like how to make more better plastic. And after I got my degree, I was like, well, I'm not doing that. I'm not going to be doing synthetic chemistry. And I didn't know what I was going to do. I got a job just doing clerical work. And then I started studying acupressure because when I was in college, I used to do casual massages on people. And I didn't know if I was helping, didn't know if I was hurting. And so I was living in Berkeley at the time and I started going to the Acupressure Institute. And like starting to learn how meridians work and how energy works and Reiki healing. And pretty quickly, I had to come to terms with okay, there's this left brain science stuff where everything needs to be proven. And then there's all this energetic stuff. And it's like they both work. And so I had to come to terms with both of them and be able to speak in both worlds. And I love that when I'm working with people, a lot of people don't really know how this body thing works. They don't, you don't understand your cell phone. A lot of people don't understand any more about their body than they do about the cell phone. So for them to be able to heal themselves, to be able to heal their body of whatever it is that's going on, including brain injuries, I want them to understand as much as possible about how it's put together and how it works. Because when you know how something works, then you have way more ability to, through your thoughts and your intentions, say, this is what I want to happen here. Body, this is the healing we want to do.
And what's interesting is when we talk about sound healing, we just had our latest PTSD summit where we had an hour of two sound healers that performed. And what I find is that sound healing really de-stresses the mind. So with you now venturing into brain injuries, in Canada, 2% of populations live with TBI, and there's about 18,000 hospitalizations each year for TBI. Touch on brain injuries from your perspective.
When you take a moving object and you slam it into a non-moving object, like this is what happens when you're in a car accident or you fall, right? Your body is moving along and then you hit the window of your car. You hit a brick wall, right? And your body moves in the car, whiplash, or whatever way it is you move. And your brain inside your skull is floating. Okay. Your skull is bone and it's very hard. And then inside there is something called cerebrospinal fluid that surrounds your brain and your spinal cord, and it nourishes and supports your brain and spinal cord. And it protects it from getting injured as much when you have this car accident. So your brain moves around inside your skull, and then you have this whole whiplash thing that happens, right? The energy of all the movement goes into the soft object. When you run into something and your car stops, the energy of all of that movement goes into crunching the car, partly, but part of the energy goes into you, into your body. So think of all of that energy that goes into your brain, into your body. And part of what I do is I help your body to be able to release all of that energy. I call it impact energy. That's the very first thing that I do with somebody. I help them release the impact energy. And sometimes that alone is transformative in the person's experience. You change the amount of energy that is stuffed inside your body so that your body can, like, imagine when you're overwhelmed and stressed. It's like what it's like in your body. It looks chaotic like that. So imagine you release all of that chaotic energy, release it from your tissues, and release it from your energy field so that you're not overwhelmed by all of that energy. That's the first thing that I do. And it's particularly relevant when it comes to head injuries because your brain is really soft. It's like tofu in consistency. It's very, very soft and squishy. So that's part of why you have this hard skull and the cerebrospinal fluid to protect it. When your brain rams into the wall, it gets bruised. And that bruised brain, that's what a concussion is. So even when you have a minor head injury, like a fender bender, not a car crashing kind of accident, but just like a rear ender, right? Where you just get jolted and you have that little whiplash so that your head goes forward and back and your brain bounces around, but not enough to like crush things, right? So imagine that you have this soft brain in there and it bumps into the wall and it bumps into the wall and it gets a little bit of a bruise. And that's what makes it so you get foggy and you can't think clearly. That's just a minor head injury, but there's still that impact energy. And so enabling your body to be able to release that impact energy from your brain, from the bones as well, from the seat belt and all of these things, all of that has an impact on your body, and releasing it from your body is really the most important first thing that I do.
That's very insightful, especially when we think about today's modern world that we live in, where when you brought up the car accidents, I immediately thought NFL players. And if you ever heard an NFL player talk about getting hit, well, a lot of times they parody it to what you just said, a car accident. And they say it's like a car accident on every single play. So I want to transition to combat brain training. Why did you get into it? And talk about what it is.
Combat brain training uses this chart of arrows. And it was developed by John Kennedy, a neuroplastician, for the purposes of helping military vets heal from traumatic brain injury. So someone he knew asked him to develop something to help with injury. And he developed this system where you are requiring your body, your brain, to be able to make decisions. When you look at this chart of arrows, okay, you start by saying what the direction of the arrow is. Right, left, down, up. So that you are using your eyes to be able to see. You're using your voice to be able to say something, and then you're requiring your brain to make decisions. This is putting a stimulus into your brain that requires it to work. And at the same time, it says to your brain, hey, this is important. I need this. And if there's a part of your brain that's not working properly, it causes your brain to say, we need to like get this working better. Here's how I describe that. If you have a part of the brain that has been injured, if it's bruised or if it's more seriously damaged than that, then the functions that this part of your brain performs aren't going to work very well.
Mm.
So if this function, say, is talking, right? Being able to say what I need to say, that's affected by issues at this area of the brain is where the speech centers are. So if you have something going on here and your brain says, we don't know how to do that right now. I can't talk. So it's like I started working with somebody who had a stroke, right? And this was where the stroke was. So the right side of his body doesn't move very well and he has difficulty talking, right? So it's like when I ask him to read this chart, I'm requiring him to talk. And his brain says, we're not doing that right now. When you demand something, when you require something, a function of your brain over and over and over again, you're giving it information. This is important. I need this. And when this function's not working and I require that function, your brain says, I have to do something about that. Neuroplasticity is being able to make new nerve connections, new neurons even, to be able to wire around a function that's not working. So if talking is not working very well for this person and we require talking, nerve here connects with nerve here and builds that function back in. That's what neuroplasticity is. The brain can heal itself all the way until the day you die. I remember when I was in school, when I was young, they used to say, you have to take care of your brain because anytime you lose a neuron, that's it. It's gone. Science now knows that you establish these new nerve connections all the way through your life. So, when you go to physical therapy, for example, and if I'm not able to use my arm very well, and I go to physical therapy and they require me to move my arm, I am telling my body over and over and over again, I'm telling my brain over and over and over again, I need to be able to move my arm, right? I've had this stroke. My arm's not working very well. Hey, we need this. And so the brain says, he's requiring that to work. We need to wire it back in. So physical therapy, by requiring you to do that movement over and over again, telling the brain, this is a priority. We need this. And your brain says, okay, I'll do it. So that's why people going to physical therapy actually get better, because requiring that by giving the stimulus has the brain put that function back in so that you get better. The same thing happens with your brain. If I say you need to talk to be able to read these arrows, the brain says, okay, and it puts it back in.
Two things that you said that were very impactful. The first one reminded me of the book, The Body Keeps the Score.
Mm-hmm.
Because as you mentioned, with the brain, it's similar to trauma, where it's not the body is actually keeping tallies, it's stored in the neural pathways. But when we operated on the other side by retraining the neural pathways in areas that our brain doesn't want to do, like learning how to walk again, learning how to talk again, it's the same element. And then the other thing that you said is that the body has an immense regenerative potential to heal itself. And that's at the core of what we do. So can you touch on how your work parodies The Body Keeps the Score? And if not, why?
Let's go back a little bit farther. I believe that everything that ever happens to you is stored in your body.
Mm.
It's stored in your energy field. It's stored in the tissues. It's stored in the bones. It's stored in the membranes and fluids. It's stored in body positions. So when people are in a car accident, for example, they may have been looking out the left window because somebody's coming to hit them from the left. And so they're looking there. There's going to be memory about the accident stored in the position.
Mm.
Your body also remembers all of the circumstances that are happening at the time. So if I had some really stressful events happening in my life at the time of this car accident, all of that stress associated with my life is also going to be stored in the injury area. It's going to be stored in the position, stored in all of that. It's going to be stored in the tissue. Okay. And then everything that happens associated with the accident after the accident is also stored. So if the things that, the doctors tell me, that goes in and it stores in the injury area. The things, the judgments that people have, the things that people say, all that stuff gets stored in the body, in the area that was injured. A huge amount of stuff gets stored there. So you have all of the impact energy of the incident itself. You've got the positional things. You've got the things that happen, the fear. You've got the things that were going on in your life. You've got, another thing that happens. Food you eat. When something bad happens, if you have food in your stomach, it can cause you to be sensitive to those foods. It could be something you eat all the time that you love, that suddenly there's a stress that happens, whether it's an injury like this or an argument, that can cause you to have a food sensitivity to the food, perhaps that you've eaten every day of your life. Suddenly you have a sensitivity to it, and then it causes reactions. So it's like all of these things are all meshed up together inside your body in the position, in the tissue that is injured. So when you go to doctors and they treat you, all they recognize and acknowledge is the physical stuff, the physical part of the injury, what they can identify on an x-ray or an MRI or a CAT scan, what they can tell with a blood test. That's all the doctors are going to tell you is going on. And a lot of times people, their tests come back, you're normal. But a lot of times people with head injuries don't feel normal, even though the tests may say you are normal, or you've been through all of the treatment that the doctor and their protocols say that they have for you, and they say, that's all we can do. You have to just learn to adjust to what you have left. And that leaves people with head injuries in this place of feeling hopeless. Like, they tell me this is it. I have to just live with this, but it's unbearable what I am experiencing. And it leads to just this, this despair, this hopelessness, this wanting to give up that so many people with serious head injuries experience.
That's an interesting point because look at CTE, for example. Well, CTE can't be studied or determined until the person passes away. And that's why we don't know that much about something like CTE. And the other thing that you said that was interesting is that even when it comes to food sensitivities, our bodies will remember things from childhood. For example, with myself, Applebee's. I had Applebee's as a child and I ended up throwing up. And now to this day, anytime I have Applebee's, I throw up. So that's what I like, that you operate at the intersection between energy healing and brain injuries, because I think that we disregard the impact that energy plays in healing. Can you touch more on how energy plays in things like brain injuries as well as just chronic disease?
Everything is energy. Everything is energy. And let's go back to talking about sound first. Okay. So sound is energy, and sound is a powerful creative force. If you think about, the creation stories, first there was the word, and then came light. Sound is first. Your words are sound. When you speak, you are creating with your words. How you speak about yourself creates. So if you are saying negative things about your body, negative things about yourself, negative things about what you want, about life, when you say negative things, they are creative. They are attracting to you things consistent with what you are saying. So I have people monitor what they say, pay attention, catch themselves, because the negative things that they say about themselves are so habitual that they don't notice that they're saying them. So this is energy. This is your intention coming out through your words. So even if you don't believe it, you want to start speaking more positive words and catching yourself when you're saying negative words, because it's all energy. So around the words that you say, energy comes to you, things happen. And using sound. So I use a tuning fork and a hockey puck to create this sound. And it helps me to be able to tune into what's going on in your body. I'm intuitive. I'm empathic. So when I am checking in with somebody and their injury, it's like I see a picture in my mind, an image in my mind of their brain or whatever it is that we are working with. I see it empathically in my head, what it looks like. And I can see where the energy is stuck or when it's moving. Now, what is energy? Everything is energy. And when I am looking at something, anything living, people, plants, animals, there's an energy flow that goes through them. So a plant, right? There's energy coming from the ground, through the roots, through the plant, through the twigs and branches, and out the leaves. There's this energy flow that's going through the plant, keeps the plant alive. Keeps the plant making flowers, making fruit, making leaves. All of that is energy flow. In the wintertime, when trees drop their leaves, the leaves die and they drop their leaves. When I check in with a plant in the winter, it doesn't have that energy flow it anymore. The plant has gone into a dormant state. Technically, there's a little bit going on, but there's not the normal amount of energy flow through the plant. And so the leaves die and drop off, and all the branches they go into a winter state. They go dormant. Okay. So the energy flow in your body is just like that. When you don't have that energy flow, the function stops. Imagine. So body. Right? For my body to function properly, the energy needs to flow through my whole body. Energy is coming from the ground into my feet, through my body, through my back, through my neck, and out the top of my head. And energy comes down, connecting me to the ground, and energy comes down. It goes through my arms and out my hands. That's what I call being grounded. Being energetically connected to the earth, connected to the sun, connected to God, connected to whatever it is you believe in out there. And the energy flows through. That's what makes your body function. And if the energy flow stops, then things stop working in your body. When the energy flow, it very often gets stuck here at the neck, which we might get into. When the energy flow there's not enough energy flow through my head. I'm not going to think clearly. I'm not going to remember things clearly. My brain is not going to work properly if I don't have this energy flow going through the head and out the top. Without the energy flow, things don't work. So imagine, I have a box on the floor out my living room. And I was walking along, paying attention to something else. Shouldn't have been doing that, but I jammed my foot into the box and I broke my little toe. So many people have done this, right? But when I jam my toe, even if it's a little bump, I'm limping. The energy flow in my foot gets blocked, right? Impact energy, like we were talking about, plus pain because it broke my toe. So I'm limping. My body's not working properly. When I am limping, it's affecting the flow of energy through my body, right? It's all stuck in my foot. It's not going up through my leg to my hip, through the rest of my body. My body is not working properly, and I'm not going to think clearly. I'm not going to operate very well because of the blockage in the energy in my body flow that came from jamming my toe. Anytime we impact ourselves and cause something to hurt, create stress, all of this stuff, all the judgments that came when I broke my toe, all that stuff, right? It's like clogging my brain, my thoughts, and I'm not working properly. And a lot of it is energy flow. When you have blocked energy like that and you get it going again, things get easier. So you might still be injured. But when you reestablish the flow of energy, some of the function starts to return. And when the energy gets blocked, another thing's affected is the circulation, the blood and the lymphatic fluid. Those things that flow get blocked, and it keeps it from healing. For your circulation to be able to bring nutrients to an area that needs to be healed so that the area can be repaired and carry away the waste, you have to have circulation of the fluids, of the energy. When you allow that energy flow to resume, there's an increase in circulation because the energy blocks parallel what's going on with the circulation. So all of it, it's all energy. And so working with things energetically winds up having a physical effect on the body.
So let's apply that logic to some of the conditions that you address. Let's start with migraines.
So let me tell a particular story. There's somebody who called me who had had migraines since she was a baby. And she had gone to doctors, gone to chiropractors, she had changed her diet, and it helped some, but she still had migraines, and they were unpredictable. She was in her 40s and she had a daughter, and she was afraid to leave the house because she didn't know when she was going to get a migraine. And her daughter is like, be quiet, mommy has a headache, kind of thing. And this really impacted her family. So she called me. I started to work with her. And I started off by teaching her the anatomy, teaching her about energy flow, because I wanted to empower her to be able to help herself. People with migraines often know ahead of time when a headache is going to be coming. They can feel it. There's this aura. So I taught her how to, when you feel this, get the energy moving. Get the energy moving between your head and the rest of your body because it gets stuck in your head when you have these headaches. Allow the energy to flow. So when I had my first session with her, I taught her the anatomy, and then she had a headache at the time. And 10 minutes into actually working with her, doing the sound healing and all that stuff that I do, I said, "How's your migraine?" And she said, "It's starting to get better." And by the end of the session, the migraine was gone. She didn't have it anymore. I did 2 more sessions with her. And by the end of that, I said, how are your migraines? And she said, "They still happen, but I can stop them." She was able to keep them from happening at all or keep them from getting bad. She got her life back. She was able to leave the house and not worry about having a migraine because she was able to stop them from happening. What difference does that make in your life? Everything changes.
Next, let's touch on ADHD.
Focus issues, including ADHD. I look at it that it's possible that this can improve by working with the energy flow, working with parts of the brain that aren't working very well together. Let me talk about something more specific that I have an actual story about. I worked with somebody who had dyslexia. And this was one of the first things that I did helping somebody with their brain, actually. This is one of the things that had me realize that I can actually work with the brain. So somebody said that I was working with for some other reason. Somebody said they had dyslexia. And I said, oh, would you like to do something about that? And I didn't know at the time if I could, because nobody had ever asked me to before. So I did research into dyslexia. Anytime I'm doing any of these things, I do research. The internet is awesome because it gives you all the information. So I do research on these things. In dyslexia, there's areas of the brain that are involved in reading, for example, that aren't working properly. There's an area in the brain, a center in the brain that would normally be very much involved in reading. And it's asleep. It's like when I check in with somebody's brain with these areas, it looks like it's just like me. Not here. Nothing happening here. Okay. And then there's a different area of the brain that's overworking, that's compensating, that's making reading possible by doing all of the work. Because normally there would be multiple areas of the brain that are involved in a complex activity like reading. So the part that is not awake and the part that's overactive, and then the other areas that are involved. So what I did was, doing this, I checked in with the person's brain and checked in with the area that is in dyslexia not working. And it was like, it was asleep. It's like, nothing going on here. Okay. Then I checked in with the area that's overworking. It's like, yeah, there's like a lot of activity going on here. So what I did was intention. Let me say another part. So I see these things going on. I see what I see in the brain, and I tell the person so that they become conscious of it. Let's zoom back again. Symptoms. Symptoms, from my perspective, are your body and your beingness trying to get your attention. A symptom says, hey, there's something wrong here. This isn't working properly. We need to do something. I need help. That's what a symptom is. Mm-hmm. There is something that your body and your beingness need you to know, but you're too close to yourself to be able to see it. You're too close to it to be able to see it. You can't do this healing on your own. You need outside information, and outside of your brain perspective is what I call it. So symptom, right? Trying to get attention, and you can't see it. Okay. So I go in there and I say, okay, this is what I see. And I tell the person, this is what I see. Not like it's diagnostic. I can't diagnose anything. I don't know if like for real fact, it's actually happening in the body. All I can tell them is what I see. It seems like the brain is chaotic or it's stuck. This area of your brain's I don't see much going on there. Okay. And when I tell them, they become consciously aware of it. Now, I just said symptoms are your body trying to get your attention, saying, hey, there is something necessary here. I need you to be aware of it. That's what a symptom is trying to tell you. But what do we do with symptoms? We take a pill and try and make it go away. That's not effectively communicating, is it? So I look and see what I see in the brain, and I tell the person so they become consciously aware of it. That alone frequently starts to change things. The energy starts to move. The energy starts to shift just by being aware of what's there. Okay. Then I check in with the area of the brain that's not working properly, dyslexia, like we were talking about. And I say to them, I'm checking in with the area that normally would be involved in reading, that in dyslexia is often not working very well. And so I tell them, it looks like that area of your brain is asleep. Let's wake it up. And so with intention, I am saying, let's wake it up. And I'm telling the person so that they, on their side, are able to say, hey, brain area, wake up so you can read. I am doing this energetically from outside with this intention. They are doing it from inside. They are telling their body, hey, you, I need you to wake up here so that we can read better. I'm doing it from outside. They are doing it themselves. Your intention tells your body what you want it to do. This is where healing happens. You are directing the show. Your body knows what it needs. Your body knows what it needs to heal and knows what it needs to do. And when you, with your intention, say, hey, body, let's do this, your body says, okay, and it does it. So with the person with dyslexia, I say, this area, we want it to wake up. And so it starts getting more active. And then we go to the area of the brain that's overworking. And I check in with it. And so I tell the person, hey, this area of the brain that tends to overwork with people with dyslexia, it's like doing everything. It's working really hard so that you can read. We want it to be able to relax a little bit. Not go to sleep, but calm down. It's been wearing itself out working on reading, which is why reading has been so difficult. It's like, it's okay. You can let go of having to work so hard because the other brain area is going to start doing some work. So you can just relax a little bit. Okay. And then what I did was I helped the different areas of the brain that are involved in reading. I helped them communicate with each other. So energetically, I'm connecting them up. I'm getting the area that wasn't working, getting them all communicating with each other. I seem to recall right now, there's like 4 areas of the brain that are involved in reading. So I got them all working together. So the next time I saw that client, I asked him, how is it reading? And for him, English is a second language. Most of the internet is English. He said, it's easier doing things online because reading the English is easier. Isn't that cool?
That is fascinating. And what's fascinating about it is that, like you brought up earlier, applying something that is considered woo woo like energy healing to neuroplasticity, and when it comes to ADHD, migraines, and other disorders, is really fascinating to me because a lot of people, when they think energy healing, they disregard the validity of it. But what I'm understanding from this interview is that energy's in everything. Energy healing works in conjunction with neuroplasticity, and if it were to work in conjunction with traditional medicine, we would have better results. So another disorder that you talk about is dementia, or that you feature on your website. And according to Harvard Health, dementia is not exactly diabetes, but they are closely connected because the brain can develop its own form of insulin resistance that prevents it from processing sugar properly. Some researchers informally refer to Alzheimer's disease as type 3 diabetes. So when you talked about focus and you talked about some of these other disorders, we didn't bring in the variable of high glucose levels. So can you touch on Alzheimer's and dementia and how your work with not only CBT but with energy healing can help with something like dementia?
Oh my goodness, this is so important. So yes, the brain uses like close to 30% of all of the energy in your body. Your brain is so energy intensive. It's so important to everything because it controls everything going on. So Your brain is highly dependent on a reliable source of energy. And it's primarily glucose that is the fuel. Now, the brain actually has an alternate set of fuels that, we can talk about some other time, but it's highly dependent on having glucose available. And there's all sorts of different things that affect that glucose metabolism, that affect energy production in the brain. So for anything related to healing the brain, it's important to address nutrition and to clean up what you eat. Inflammation in the body contributes to all symptoms, all pain. Inflammation is very, very important. And the biggest thing affecting this that is in your control is what you eat. Anytime you have an injury, the process of healing, it creates inflammation. I mean, inflammation in the body is serving a very important purpose. We need inflammation. It's when inflammation is out of control and continuous, that's when it becomes a problem. So you've had an injury, or you have, dementia or whatever. Inflammation is part of what's going on. So cleaning up the diet so that you're eating less sugar. When you eat sugar, it creates inflammation in the body. That's just normal. When you have toxins in foods and food additives and all kinds of garbage they put in foods, that also creates inflammation because it's toxicity. So your body creates inflammation to deal with the toxicity. And then if there's any actual injury, that also has inflammation. So working with diet is such an important part for all of the above. And for people with dementia, in terms of nutrition, it can be beneficial to take coconut oil and medium chain triglycerides, which is part of coconut oil, that produces the alternate fuel in the brain that enables the brain to kind of wire around not having the glucose working properly while you're working on metabolism and all those things to be able to help glucose metabolism work better. It can really help dementia to supplement with coconut oil and or MCT oil. What else did you want me to say about that? Because I kind of got off on a track.
No, that was very clean. And I know that you have over 4 years or close to 4 years of experience in this work, so you have a lot of insights on these diseases. But I want to talk now about miracleinspirations.com, because what separates your website from a lot of other websites is that you have a feature called Share Your Story, where people get the chance to have 10 minutes. There's no selling, to share their experience with brain injury, with headaches, migraines, and all the chronic diseases that we talked about today. And you went over some of those, but what impact has that had on you personally and listening to all these different people share their story?
Let me come back to that. Let me answer the previous question, because I didn't talk about this when it comes to dementia. Okay.
You didn't.
So this has been shown to help people heal their brains, help to heal PTSD, help focus issues, and also to help with dementia. Okay. By requiring that you read the arrows, it's causing your brain to be able to, again, coordinate vision, what you're seeing, what you're speaking, and making decisions about the chart. So that has been shown to help people whose memories, whose clarity of thought are compromised. And so requiring your body to be able to perform these functions better helps. I've worked with people in a senior residential facility, and after just a couple of sessions with them, group sessions with them, they found this stuff really works. So that's addressing that. So now let's answer the question about the Share Your Story calls. I started having 10-minute calls with people to give them an opportunity to share their experience of head injuries, of what they are experiencing, of how they feel. So often, people with brain injuries feel like they're really isolated.
Mm.
They're alone. Um, People don't care about them. They've given up on them. And it depends on the head injury they have. If they don't look like there's anything wrong with them, then a lot of people sometimes will think that there's nothing wrong with them. And so when they're not able to do what they need to do, they kind of tell people they're lazy, that, there's nothing wrong with you. And then if the doctors have said, this is all we can do, you have to just live with it, then people get into this place of being really hopeless and demoralized and giving up and, wanting to not live anymore. One of my clients said, I just really wanted to not be done, be done. And I want it to happen now. Like, she wanted to just die. And it's really sad when people lose their hope because they don't see change happening. They don't know how they're going to improve. And so just giving people a space where they can tell their story can be incredibly, incredibly healing. Just that alone, like being seen and heard in their experience, and to share, what happened with their medical care, sometimes which actually makes them worse. And, just that whole experience. And then, so I have 10-minute calls with people where there's this sharing your story, and it's not a sales call. If you decide you want to talk with me about possibly working with me, then we schedule another time. But this is just where you get to share your story, and I get to hear what your experience is. And what it's like experiencing that. This also happened associated with being in Facebook groups for people who have had traumatic brain injuries. And I have, it's been a little distressing actually doing that, because a lot of the people in those groups define themselves by their injury. They define themselves by their symptoms, and they define themselves by their loss. And they've given up. And they are, some of those people are no longer trying to heal, or they don't believe that it's possible. And me coming from a place that it's always possible until the end of your life, it's possible to heal your brain. It's been actually distressing to me, seeing how people are so closed to the possibility of healing themselves, and they've given up. So that leads me to, in those groups, at least say, your brain heals itself till the day you die, till the end of your life. Healing is possible. Don't give up. They don't really listen to me, maybe, but I at least say it so that there's a little bit of hope that is possible for them over there. And I always hope that one day, like in medieval times where we lived in stone castles, right? Mm-hmm. And there were these turrets with very small slits that people used to shoot arrows through. I see people as being in these stone turrets with all their windows closed. And I just send information over, hey, have hope, you can heal, you can heal, you can heal, hoping that one day their window opens a little bit and that they will remember that I told them these things. I won't know them then, probably, but they will. It's like, oh, that woman in that Facebook group, she told me that I could heal. I was like, if they open the window, then possibility might get to them one day.
And yeah, that goes back to the energy healing and the sound healing, is when it comes to that work, it comes with the hope. It comes with the chance that people can heal. And I think that when you look at traditional medicine, they lack a lot of that. So my final question, and I can't talk about injuries without going here, is NFL athletes. There was
Mhm.
just a story that came out where a famous football player who actually is on our website, on our stem cell page, Chris Johnson, who did stem cell therapy, but now he has ALS. And there's a stat that football players are 4 times more likely to get ALS when they play football. So how can combat brain training and sound and energy healing help NFL athletes to combat what could come down the road with severe brain injuries and severe chronic diseases?
This is a huge issue. Huge, huge issue. By the way, I have to say, all of this work that I do, it's all done remotely. I'm working with people on Zoom. None of these people who I have helped with head injuries have been in person. Or that's not true. One person that I work with for her brain injury, I see her in person, but I'm sitting over here and she's sitting in a different chair. It's not hands on. So wherever you are in the world, I can help you. Obviously, I can't guarantee, right? I can't diagnose, I can't treat anything medically. And the power of your intention is huge. So when it comes to football, hockey, and soccer, where in some cases people are intentionally putting themselves in positions where their heads are going to get hit.
Mhm.
Soccer players purposely hit their head with a ball. Football players purposely ram their heads into other players wearing hard helmets. And then they pile on top of each other. It's like the amount of brain injury happening there is like massive. And on top of that, it's injury after injury after injury. So when you hit a head injury, so it's like me, I stood up underneath the door of the cabinet in my kitchen and I gave myself a mild concussion, right? That injures my brain. If I were to then like have a fall or run into a wall with my head or run into another player, it's like because my brain is already injured, it gets injured even more with the subsequent injury. With players in games where this is over and over and over again, you're compounding the injury. With the very first one, it didn't fully recover. And then you hit it again and more damage occurs. Even if the original injury happened a long time ago, a subsequent injury could do more damage than that injury would by itself because of the prior injury. Any prior injury to the brain could mean that a subsequent injury has more impact. It's huge. And so people who run with force into other people causes tremendous damage to the brain. And one of the common things that happens with football players, for example, is rage, explosive anger, explosive outbursts, and violent behavior, like sometimes killing people.
Mhm.
So when we have head injuries, almost invariably for serious head injuries, people have emotional imbalance, explosive anger, having a really hard time regulating their emotions and, not being able to think clearly, not being reasonable, right? So a very common part of this is the frontal brain. Okay. So the frontal brain is where we do a lot of our thinking, our higher functions of our brain What makes us different from, the apes, for example, is all of the major capacity for all the things that we do as humans. A lot of that happens because we have a front brain. This thinking, all of this stuff, emotional regulate, all of these things, a lot of this controlled by the frontal brain. And when we have these injuries where the frontal brain gets hurt over and over and over again, football players don't run into each other with the side of their head. They run into each other with the front of their head, the front and the top of their head. So that this area, this very sensitive, important area of your brain gets damaged over and over and over again, leading to the emotional dysregulation problems and the illogical, nonsensical, like how to control things that people in these situations do. So what's possible? It's possible that so much damage has occurred that there will continue to be residual damage. There's no way of knowing how much is repairable. But by doing something like this and working with me to help wire things back up again, get the energy flowing instead of being chaotic and stuck, your ability to heal is strengthened, capitalized on. Your body, your brain is able to heal itself for the rest of your life. No matter where you are with it, I believe it's possible to get improvement. 100% restoration of function, likely not. But as much as you can gain is better than nothing.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Sandra. You can find her at miracleinspirations.com, and the Decent Med Brain Health page is coming soon with Sandra as the inspiring author. This has been Decent Med Showcase Miracle Inspirations featuring Sandra Lee. Everyone, have a great rest of their day.
Thank you.